Alright guys, Flo from Boxing Evolution TV, and I'm just joined by Sir Alan Foley of the Queenbury Boxing League.
I like it, Sir Alan.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. So when did you get the title, sir?
It's a family title,
Yeah.
generation through generation, so I don't tend to use it, to be honest, but, you know, it's nice when it is used.
I just thought the public should know of your correct abbreviation.
No, it's good for them to know, but I don't like to talk about it too much.
Okay. Now, in traditional Sir fashion, you have a few things to say about the unlicensed boxing world and rules and regulations, and how Queenbury is different to the other outfits there and stuff. Is this in regards to the unfortunate incidents of a boxer dying up north, I believe, in an unlicensed bout? So.
Yeah, tragic, and it's one of those things, you know, being involved in boxing and seeing all the different sort of codes. You know, you've got amateur, you've got professional boxing, you've got Queenbury Boxing League, and then outside of those three, you've got, you know, a plethora of different promotions. You know, some do a great job, some not so good. But yeah, it's just sort of, as I say, I've been looking at a lot of the chat on sort of social media, stuff like that, and it's very interesting to see people's perceptions of, you know, how things are run within boxing, or I should say outside of the British Boxing Board of Control and the Amateur Boxing Association in Queensbury. So yeah, just sort of you know, shedding a little bit of light on how we do things, and, you know, and talking about it, really. Okay,
so what is it, you know, that makes Queensbury different to these other, shall we say, unlicensed or non-registered boxing, professional boxing or amateur boxing bodies? I mean,
I think the thing is that things that you see about is a big thing, is the sort of medical provision that you see that shows. You know, I hear a lot of boxers that we speak to and say, you know, oh, I've boxed on shows outside of the league. There was no medical cover at all, or very minimal cover. Weight discrepancy is another massive thing, where, you know, you've got guys turning up to a fight and there's as much as a stone or even more that they're fighting, but they feel kind of obligated to go through with the fight because they've sold tickets to the fight and they've got their friends and family coming, and they don't want to disappoint people, and they're put in an awkward position. And also just the disparity in ability. You know, you've got people being put in who massively more experienced, you know, former good amateurs going in with guys who've had little or no amateur experience, and, you know, they're in there almost like a sort of as a warm body to you know, to get the ticket seller a win, so to speak. So, you know, it's rife. It goes on in boxing, but, you know, there is a lot of that going out there, and all those combinations together create, you know, we're all in the boxing industry, and we know, you know, the object of the game, you know, is to hit your opponent and win by, you know, either stopping them or winning on points. So there's inherent risks, like there is with every sport. You know, if you look at every other sport, there's risk in it, whether it's you're getting into a Formula 1 car and driving at 200 miles an hour, whether you're going into a rugby game and, you know, you've got 10 or 15 plus stone guys landing on top of you. There are inherent risks, but the thing that makes Queensbury different, I believe, is the procedures we've put in place. So, I mean, you know, I can talk through and just sort of...
Oh yeah, please. I'm a brand new boxer. You know, I've never done anything before in my life. Let's just say, for example, describe the procedure that from first contacting you to me stepping in the ring. Describe, you know, the processes that I go through by the Queenbury Boxing League to make sure that what I'm doing is as safe as possible. Okay.
Well, I think the most important thing is, you know, we've got a massive duty of care towards anybody stepping through, whether it's at the sparring trials or boxing in the league competitively. We've got a massive duty of care towards them to ensure that we do everything possible to ensure their experience is a positive experience, is a safe experience, and the environment's right. So I think the key thing which everybody talks about with Queensbury is we do sparring trials, and how that works, I know you've been to them and seen them, but, you know, a new boxer applies to the league. We take a detailed brief from them. You know, what experience have you had before? What weight do you want to compete at? But when they come to the sparring trial, that's all about gauging their level. So it's never done on a paper record, as we call it, where somebody phones up and says, I want to box, I've had this many fights, I'm 12 stone, I just want to get in there and box in the league. Now, we've seen it, my business partner Ross Minter, who does all the matching and does a fantastic job doing those matches. He's coming from a professional amateur experience, so he knows what he's looking for. But first and foremost, the boxers are coming in, they're being seen, and then they're being matched accordingly on their ability in that sparring trial. So you haven't got that where we've seen it where people have phoned us up, and it works both ways. Somebody phones up, says, I've only had one fight, they come along to the sparring trials, but they've been training in a good gym with good other sort of other fellow professionals, amateurs, etc., and they're a really good level, so there's no way they'd be put in as a one bout novice in with another genuine one bout novice who might have been going down his local club and training a couple of times a week and fancies giving it a go. So that's a real crucial point, that every boxer is being seen individually, assessed, and then they're put into the categories. So, we divide it into 4 categories within the league. You've got the novice, you've got the regional, national, and for the best, the British. So the boxers are entered into the league at their ability, and then they work their way up. Or if they're good enough, they could go straight into the British category because they are at that level. So I think that's a crucial point. Also the weight thing. Now the one thing, and to be honest, it's not just for sort of boxing on the sort of, if you want to call it the so-called unlicensed scene or the semi-pro, whatever you want to sort of deem it. Even in professional boxing, I've read boxing news week in, week out, and then you see, fairly big weight disparities in sort of debutants coming in, and their opponent, they're fighting a journeyman, and he was maybe sort of 6 or 7 or even 8 pounds over, but they've still taken the fight because you've got the good amateur pedigree coming in against the journeyman. And it's not only, you can't say that in professional boxing it's always on the line, straight down the middle, fair straight weights. Whereas what we do with Queensbury is, if it's a championship fight, then it's matched at the championship limit. So, for example, if someone's fighting for the Queensbury super middleweight title, they have to weigh in at 12 stone. They not an ounce above. They can come in lighter, obviously, under the limit. Whereas if it's outside of a championship fight, we might have a couple of boxers say, I want to box and I want to sort of fight around 12 stone 3, 12 stone 4. So the fight's made at 12 stone 3, 12 stone 4. And there's only, depending on how the trainers look at it, they're always aiming for that 12.3 or 12.4 weight. But you can have a couple of pounds within that. But normally, as I say, it is bang on the weight side of things. So you haven't got this, stone difference, which you get all the time. And it is, especially at the lighter weights, when you've got kids coming in at 10 stone, and all of a sudden they're fighting at 11 stone, it's madness. Whereas you can see that on the heavyweight side of things. Once you're above 14 stone 4 in the cruiserweight, you are going to get heavyweights. Some are coming in at sort of 15, 16 stone, some are 18 stone, so you will get that weight difference. But on the bigger guys, that's heavyweight.
It's part of it, isn't it? So you've got the methods in place for assuring that fighters aren't mismatched. One boxer that's really experienced isn't against another boxer who's got no experience, and you do the sparring trials to make sure that there's no little bits of lying going on, or trying to pretend that they're less experienced than they are.
But it's not even though that it's not 100% foolproof.
Of course, it never is.
You get guys coming in who you don't know genuinely. That's where Ross comes into it and is watching, and he'll spot that. But we've had guys where we've stopped the spar and said, "Listen, you're not even trying." It's I didn't want to sort of go flat out, but unfortunately people are not 100% honest. Even when they come into the sparring trials, you can see there's genuine ability just by the way they're moving, and it's that's what they're there for. So you aren't getting that situation where you turn up on the night and somebody who's phoned and said, "Oh, yeah, I've only had 1 or 2 fights," and then they turn up on the night and they're absolutely mustard. And then you can genuinely see, and that's where the sort of, you don't want that to be found out on the night with another novice boxer who's genuinely come into a contest at any level really, and then gets either hurt or injured.
Okay, so it seems like you're doing as much as you can to ensure fair matching and that the weight limits aren't messed around and stuff like that. I mean, but what else are you doing? Are you involved in any kind of drug testing or anything like that, blood tests?
Yeah, do you know what, we don't. It's something that we're looking to do into to bring in with the league, especially on the championship fights. In terms of medical provision, that's something that we're very, very sort of up on. For example, at a Queenbury event, you've got paramedic, an EMT, an emergency medical technician, our ringside doctor who comes to every show. He is also an anaesthetist as well, and we also inform the local or the closest neurological hospital. So if there is, it went through with the Michael Watson side of things where you've got the golden hour, as they call it in professional boxing. and the paramedic team that we actually work with, they call it I think they call it the platinum 10 minutes, whereas all the sort of the oxygen levels within the boxer, glucose levels, all those things, it's a massive part that if the worst case scenario happened, those levels need to be, as I say, not a medical practitioner, I don't know, but they know what they're looking for to ensure the best possible recovery rates if the worst case scenario happens. So that's just a minimum standard within the league, so it's got to be something that's done. Whereas I can't talk for other promotions, I don't know what sort of what they put in place, but all the fighters are medical before they go on. But I think the thing is, like, you get a lot of debate in amateur boxing. The medicals don't include a brain scan. In professional they do, but what you've got to look at is that within amateur boxing the rounds are shorter. I know it varies whether they're 2 or 3 minute rounds in the duration, but in professional boxing, if you look across where the majority of injuries have come, serious brain injuries within professional boxing, it's been in the latter rounds, the championship rounds. That's not a hard and fast rule, but you look at the grueling fights where they get to the 10s, the 11s, the round 12s. That's where, when fighters are collapsing, that it's a long fight. They're taking sustained punishment. Within the league, they're 2 minute rounds. The maximum duration is 5, but that's for our British level. So you've got guys who are going in there who are experienced boxers, good amateur pedigree, or very experienced within sort of boxing in other codes.
Where it seems like you've got most of that, the medical emergency kind of stuff tied up and all the other aspects. What about when it comes to refereeing of the actual bouts, and how do you decide when to stop a bout and things like that? Is that something that you plan actively for?
Yeah, of course. It's a really good point, because what we do is each of the referees who officiate on a Queenbury show, we've got Seamus Dunn, former professional referee, Ken Curtis, and a host of other referees who we're working with as well now. But they're given guidelines before, and they know with each bout what level the boxer's at. So, for example, you've got a couple of raw novice kids who are boxing each other. They've come to the sparring trials. They're in with each other. They're in heavier gloves, whether it's 14 or 16 ounce gloves, depending on how novice they are. But the referees know that these kids are novice, so it's